Last month's ICE detention of a Nigerian nun in Texas who has legally lived and worked as a registered nurse in the U.S. for nearly 20 years was in the news again this week. Sister Leticia Ugboaja, known as Sister Letty, was taken into custody while walking to Sunday Mass at her church in McAllen, Texas in June. Parish officials posting on social media facilitated her release several hours later. This week, her church community came out to support her again when she was required to show up for an ICE check-in. In 2019, a judge denied Sister Letty's asylum application, but did grant her protection from removal because she is likely to face torture in her native Nigeria. Her attorney says Sister Letty is legally permitted to work in the U.S. and has complied with everything required of her. During her ICE meeting this week, she was informed she might face deportation to an unnamed third country. In a strongly worded statement released this week, Bishop Daniel Flores of the Diocese of Brownsville, Texas, expressed gratitude that Sister Letty will be able to remain in the community while her case moves forward. He wrote, "Sister Letty's case reminds us that a right to seek recourse and respect for the rules of due process are a vital part of our legal system, designed to protect the vulnerable who often have no voice." The Catholic bishops have long called for and continue to advocate for humane reform of the immigration system, one that respects the distinction between criminals and asylum seekers who are fleeing criminals. Joining us now from South Texas is one of the most prominent advocates for upholding the dignity of people who migrate to the U.S. Sister Norma Pimentel is a religious sister with the Missionaries of Jesus and the executive director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, where she oversees the charitable arm of the Diocese of Brownsville. Sister, thank you so much for being with us. Sister Letty's arrest happened within your diocese. You were just with her on Tuesday at her ICE check-in. She's been in the U.S. for nearly 2 decades now, has never missed an immigration appointment. What was your reaction when you learned of her brief detainment?
Well, it was truly a sad moment because I was in mass myself, and when I got a notice to see if I could see how I could help, and so the one thing immediately that concerned me was the fact that the priest who alerted me to what had just happened told me that she was very frightened and very scared and was crying. And so I really, really wanted to make sure I could possibly be by her side while she went through this process and try to figure out whether we could get her out or not. I knew she needed somebody by her side, and I first thing called an agent from ICE that I knew from from recent past, and I asked, can you see what is happening? Can you guide us as to what we can do? And can you find out if I can be by her side while we figure all of this out? And because I knew, knowing her, she's such a beautiful person, and how sensitive she was, and how they describe how she was impacted by when she was taken, and so unexpectedly as she was walking to church, and the least thing in her mind was that somebody was just going to take her in and change her life this way. And so I can just imagine myself how she may have been feeling, and how much she needed somebody by her side. And that was my most immediate concern and worry.
And how is Sister Letty doing since her arrest?
I think she's a strong woman that is trying her best to put this behind her and move forward with focusing on who she is and what she has been doing, and continue to serve the community. But I noticed that even the day of the press conference, her reaction is immediately she becomes overwhelmed with fear, and in an instant as to having to face all that she has to deal with it in the press, and the media, and going to the check-in. All these moments are not easy for her at all. You could see it in herself. She's struggling to try to keep herself calm, and so it's not easy. I think she in any moment she fears that somebody's going to come and just grab her and take her again, and so it's something that I'm sure happens to everybody that goes through something similar.
Speaking of that press conference, I want to play for our viewers something that Sister Letty said in her only public comments following her arrest. It was at that press conference last week that you were also a part of. Let's take a listen.
Sunday Mass is obligatory. And we have to attend Mass every day if you can, and Sunday is mandatory. And it's for me a nun not to go to Mass on Sunday, not to receive communion. It was very, very heartbreaking for me. I was told, even when I told him, can I go to Mass? Can I just attend Mass? Can I receive communion? And the answer was no.
Sister, can you tell us, have you observed immigration enforcement getting in the way of Catholic immigrants accessing the sacraments in South Texas?
You know, what I hear from priests, local priests that call me and tell me, Norma, please help me. One of our families, one of their mothers, and they're all frightened, and and some of them have been, picked up going to their Catholic school, dropping off kids, going and maybe seeing the cars that are around close by, and so I think that that is a reality that I don't know if directly picking somebody from mass or going to church, but they are around observing and possibly picking up people, definitely. And I had yes, priests call me all the time to tell me somebody going to, especially to drop off their children at the Catholic schools or at the regular schools, and so that is happening, and it's so sad to hear that, and the fact that people are afraid to go to church, you know.
Sister, zooming out a bit, this topic of immigration enforcement, it is one of the most charged topics in our nation, and one that Catholics are divided over as well. How do you see the balance of upholding the dignity of the human person who is immigrating here, but also respecting the right of the U.S. to protect its borders, and that secure borders actually help guard against attacks on human dignity, including violence or human trafficking, for example? What are your thoughts there?
Yes, I think that they go hand in hand as far as observing the a legal process of our country to put order in, and I don't think it contradicts the respect and upholding the dignity of every person, and also giving every immigrant, especially immigrants that contributed to our country's well-being, opportunities for safe legal procedures that offer them pathways for them to legalize their status, and so that they're actually contributing in a positive way to our community, as did Sister Leticia. She was somebody uh, being part of a beautiful part of who we are as a community. And so I think that we must be able to distinguish the difference and establish pathways that are good for those people who are here in our country, helping our country for and the well-being of who we are as a nation.
And Sister, has your work at Catholic Charities Rio Grande Valley, has it changed amid President Trump's ramped up immigration enforcement policies? What differences have you noticed?
Yes, of course. Well, since the new administration came into operation, there hasn't been anybody that has been allowed to enter the United States. Everybody who has attempted to come in has been put in detention or immediately sent back to their country or another country. And so we haven't seen the number of people that have been brought to us by Border Patrol after they've been processed or given permission to continue a legal process for their asylum. That hasn't happened since this administration came into office. So that's how it has changed. And so uh, my hopes are that those pathways reestablished for those people who merit the opportunity to ask for asylum, and they're not a threat to the United States, they're not criminals that are here asking for safety and protection. I think those legal pathways need to be established and allowed to certain individuals that present themselves as something that contributes good to our country.
Sister Norma, thank you so much for your insights and for joining us this week. Thank you.
Most welcome.